Okay, so welcome to a new guide on this channel, and this occasion is the MICROFREAK from Arturia. So this is not a review, it's a complete deep dive guide about this synth. Now everything on this guide is in chapters. If you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. Now if you like this, please like and subscribe, and if you have the money, you can buy me a coffee. Everything is on the description. So you have 384 slots, so you have a lot of places to put your patches. Now from 0 to 128 is going to be factory presets. So right there is the last of the factory preset. Then on 129, we can see it right there, it's going to say template at the bottom. And this is one of the categories you have on each patch. So from 128 to 160, you have a lot of templates that you can use just to build your own custom presets. And then after 160, everything else is going to be an init patch. So these are the user slots. So let me stand on some patch, maybe 54, that's fine. So sometimes you're going to be standing right here and maybe you want to create an init preset and you will need to go to all the way, to 160. And that's, no good. So what you can do, you can triple tap this button and you need to do it really quick. And it will just reinitialize this preset. So now it's going to be an init preset. Now also you need to be aware that maybe let's stand on this preset, doesn't matter. This is going to be the the preset, and I start making some changes, adjusting the envelopes and doing some funky things. And maybe this is the final sound. So if you change the preset and you don't save it, you will lose it. You need to remember that. So this is the sound, my own custom sound. I go out and then go back in. And it's just not going to remember whatever we did. Now, one thing that you need to remember is that the factory presets is something that you cannot really edit. You cannot remove them. So if I wanted to save my own preset, let's say I'm going to use this as a template, and I just start changing things, and then I wanted to save it, it's not going to let me save it because the factory presets are override protected. So you will need to save it on, one of the user presets. Now, still, you can change this. You need to go to utility right here. When you go to utility, all the way, at the top, you have the presets and so on and so on and so on. And if you go all the way down, the MISC is like the, settings for the synthesizer. You need to press down, and right here is going to say mem protect. So I'm going to go right there, and right now it's going to say factory only, so it's protecting the factory presets. If you want to override the factory content, you just can move this knob and disable that feature. In this case, I just, I like that. I don't want to erase my factory presets, but you can disable the write protect if you wish. Now, a good way to avoid losing your changes, let's say, I'm going to stand right here and we make, some change, whatever. And then I move and oh my God, I've just lost my preset because I went to a different preset. A good way to avoid this mess is by going right here to utility, and then you go to browsing. Inside browsing, when you go right there, you have an option that says click to load. And this one, click to load. So when we go to click to load, it's going to say off. So this means that if I turn it on, by default, it's off. If you move this knob, it's going to load the next preset and, and so on. But if I turn this on and I'm just going to, confirm the change and go out, I'm going to be playing this and I'm going to be changing the presets. So behind the scenes, it's just standing on a different preset, but I'm just getting the same one, right? It's not changing. That's why it's click to load. You need to click to load the next preset. Let me just go to a different one, death. Okay, that one is fun. So, this is the preset. Now, whatever we have right here will not reflect whatever you are loading on the presets, the knob positions. So if I play something, as soon as I move this cutoff, it's going to adjust it to whatever the preset, we have on the preset now. But we are modifying this. Now, when we go to the initial, the initial screen showing the preset name, it's going to show an asterisk right there. So this means that this was edited. But, when we first load the patch, all the knob positions are just, on a default position, and they will not reflect whatever values the preset is using. And, it just makes sense. Now, the thing is that sometimes you want to load the panel. You want to say, okay, I want to use whatever I have right here, whatever we have on the cutoff, the resonance, and so on. So what you need to do is you need to press the panel. And that's why it's called panels, for loading the panel. You press it, and whatever configuration, whatever knob position you have right here is going to adjust it to the preset. It's going to read the knobs, and then, it says panel on, and now it's going to reflect everything we have right here, reflects on the patch. So one of the most confusing things about the MICROFREAK is the Paraphonic option that you have right here. And it's because we can play 4 keys at the same time. So it's, sometimes it sounds like a polyphonic instrument, but it's really not. It's paraphonic. Now there's a tiny, tiny little twist that makes this feel like a polyphonic instrument. Now, when we talk about polyphonic instruments, we might have one single oscillator. Let's just pretend that this is the oscillator. We just have one single one. But then on a polyphonic instrument like the DeepMind 12, we have 12 different voices. So this means that everything inside the synth, it's duplicated times 4 if we talk about, 4 voices. One oscillator, 4 voices, everything is duplicated times 4. So each voice goes through its own filter and amp envelope and everything else. Now the MICROFREAK is paraphonic, but we have a tiny, tiny little twist. So when you're not in paraphonic, this is going to be straight mono. When you play a key, you just get one, and when I play the next key, this one is going to replace whatever I was pressing. So it's just a mono, right? That's fine. Now when we go to paraphonic, this is going to be a little bit different. I can play one key, a second key, a third key, and a fourth key. Now if I play a 5, I'm going to be losing this one, the lower one. So it's going to steal that voice. So how in hell can we play 4 different voices since this is paraphonic? This is because internally the MICROFREAK has 4 copies of the oscillator. So we have one, all of this section, we have it times 4 inside. Again, remember this is digital, not analog. So we have 4 copies of this. So each key that we play is going to be assigned to one of the 4 copies. If I play, let's say, a new key, that one is going to go to the second oscillator, this one to the third oscillator, and this one to the fourth oscillator. Still, since this is paraphonic and not polyphonic, we cannot have different copies of the cutoff and everything else that, we have on the chain. So for example, we have one single analog filter, so the 4 oscillators will go to one single filter, and they will go to the amp envelope, and we have only one amp envelope. So that's why paraphonic. We can play 4 oscillators, multiple sources, but then they will funnel through one single thing, and then the sound goes out. So what is the problem? What's the difference with this one? So with some monosynths, where you get this paraphonic feature, you can play multiple notes, and then each note will attempt to articulate. The envelope will be re-triggered because it's paraphonic. We have only one single envelope. And a perfect example of this is going to be, for example, the Poly D from Veringer. We have 4 different oscillators, and then we have everything goes to one single filter and one single envelope. But we can play 4 different keys, and each one will be assigned to an oscillator. Now, let me show you the problem first on the Poly D, and then I'm going to show you how this is going to solve that problem. Okay, so right here I'm on the Poly D. This is a complete analog synthesizer, and on this one we can do mono because that's the main soul of the synthesizer. But in this one, that's why it's poly, we can use the poly, and this doesn't mean that it's going to be a polyphonic instrument. It's going to be a paraphonic instrument. We have 4 oscillators, only one single cutoff frequency, one single filter, and then we have one single envelope. So this one will do the same thing we have on the MICROFREAK. If I play one key, this one key is going to go to one oscillator. The other one, if I play a new key, is going to go to the second oscillator. A new key is going to go to the third one. And a fourth one is going to go to the fourth oscillator. But we don't have 4 different voices. We have 4 different oscillators, and they are feeding and going through, a single filter and a single envelope. So when I play a chord, it sounds pretty poly to me, right? Because we are making just a chord, and it sounds, pretty much nice. Maybe it's a little bit detuned, but that's fine. But, we can play a chord. Now, if I go to the attack and I make everything super slow, we're going to start noticing the difference between a paraphonic and a real polyphonic instrument. If I play a key, it's going to go, from all the way down, and then it's going to go up. And if I do on the filter as well, it's going to be a little bit more obvious. I'm going to play one key, and it's going to go up. Now, I'm going to play the second key, and I'm going to play any other key. I'm going to play a new key. Can you hear what's going on? I'm going to play a third key. And I'm going to play a fourth key. So as I keep playing keys, one oscillator is going to be triggered, so the envelope is triggering again. But all the oscillators are going to go down in volume and then up in volume. Because this one is a paraphonic instrument. We have only one of these. So every time we play a new key, it's going to just do whatever we are doing right here. It's going to go down and then up. So we hear like the sound it's sucking and then going back. Right? So this is what we get with an ADSR and Paraphonic. Now, 4 different oscillators. Now, this has a very smart way with the decay and the auto-damp when we use Unison and we use Poly just to make it better. But it's on the MicroFreak, it works on a different way. So back to the MicroFreak, I'm going to adjust the envelopes. Maybe I'm going to do something like that, something, very simple. So when I play a key, that one is going to go to one oscillator. It's going to ramp up, then go down. And when I play a new key, this one is going to re-trigger the envelope, but we don't hear that right here, right? We just don't get the same thing. So if I play this one, we are not going to hear this going down and up, just like we did with the Paul D. We just don't get it, right? It works like a real polyphonic instrument. So why we don't get the same thing we get on the Poly D? So internally, since this is digital and we can do it, with the digital instrument, internally the MicroFreak has 4 hidden VCA for each oscillator. Yeah, that's the trick. So when we play a key, I'm going to be playing a key, the main envelope is going to stay open because it knows that we are playing and holding a key, right? So when we play a new key, each oscillator, remember we have 4, we can play 4, has its own invisible VCA that it's mimicking whatever we have right here. So when we play something, it's going to simulate this envelope, but it's the hidden envelope that we have on this section on each oscillator. This one is staying open, but then, the copy is just pretending to do whatever we are doing right here. So we don't really get polyphony, it's just an emulation or just an illusion of polyphony, but it works great. But in the end, this is not polyphonic, it's paraphonic, because we have one single one and one single one. This is, it's doing an emulation of polyphony, which works great, but, the things are, this is what it is. It's still a paraphonic instrument, but with a twist. And Arturia calls this extended polyphony. That's, the name they use for this. All right, so let's just keep going. So the main soul of this synthesizer are the different oscillator types that you have available. And they are all different from each other. Right here, you have the type, and you can go to this one, and you have a million of, million oscillator types. Now, each knob is going to control some unique feature of each oscillator. So in this guide, instead of spending 80% of the time, and it's going to last like 1 hour, maybe a little bit more, covering every single oscillator and each of the params because they are all different and they do different things, instead of spending a lot of time just doing this, I much prefer to use one single oscillator, which is going to be the first one, the basic waves. I'm not going to even use this. So I'm going to always be starting on an initial patch, and we're going to work with just that oscillator. Now still, because the oscillators are super important for the synth, I've recorded a separate guide going one by one and talking about the difference, talking about each knob and all the different properties that we get for each oscillator. So right there at the top, you have the link, or you can go to the description right there at the bottom. You will have the link to that guide. And on that one, I'm just going to talk about the oscillators. We're going to learn all the oscillators and everything that they can do. But on this one, I'm going to focus everything on learning the rest of the synth. The envelopes, the matrix, the sequencer, the arpeggiator, and everything that we have on this synthesizer, minus the oscillators. The only thing I'm going to be using is going to be the basic waves, and I'm just going to be using always on an Init patch. I'm going to start always from the scratch on that one and use the basic waves. Right, so after the oscillator, we need to talk about first the filter and then the amp envelope that we have right here. So the filter, and I will always start from the, a default patch. So we have that, the dull sound. So we have an analog filter, and it says right here. So they made sure that that this is analog and this is not digital. So the filter is a very simple 12 dB per octave. So Arturia says that they didn't go with 24 because of the oscillators, because you have a lot of different sounds. So if you go really aggressive with the oscillators, you're going to be cutting a lot of the sounds that we can get from here. And I think they are right. They made the right call. So the filter, it's not super aggressive. So I'm going to go all the way open and the resonance all the way down. So we get a very simple cutoff and a very simple resonance. The cutoff is going to cut high frequencies if we're standing on the LPF, and we need to talk about the type right now. But we are just going to be cutting frequencies, and the resonance is going to add a bump to the cut in the cutoff. When we are cutting at that position, it will create a bump, and at some point we are going to be getting that cool sound. Now with this synthesizer, you have the three different types of filter. You have the LPF, you have the band pass, which is going to be that shape, and you need to remember always that the filter is very important for the band pass. If you have it all the way to the bottom, you're just going to be, sweeping the lows or sweeping all the way to the highs. So the resonance is going to give you a boost there, so you get a different sound. Right, and then you have the high pass filter, which is the same thing as the low pass filter, but the opposite. We're going to be cutting low frequencies, and we still can, use the resonance right there. So that's it. It's a very simple and effective filter. And one of the most common things we can do with the cutoff is to, modulate the filter when we play a key, something like that. And we don't have this option right here. And it's because it's going to be right here on the amp envelope. So this means that we need to move to this section. We're going to be talking about how the envelope, this is the main envelope, works, the buttons and everything else. And then we will talk about the filter amount, which it will be used to modulate this cutoff filter. So the path is going to be analog filter, and then it will go to this envelope. Now this one is the amp envelope of the synthesizer. And pretty much all synthesizers, they have an amp envelope, and then the sound goes out of the synth. So this envelope is going to control how the volume or how the sound goes out, It's going to shape the sound. Now, you might already know how attack, decay, release, and sustain ADSR works, but this is maybe your first synth and you are a little bit confused, so I'm just going to show you how it works right here. And if you already know, you just can move forward to the next thing. So the envelope will shape how the sound will go out. And now we are talking about volume. It's going to control the volume. So when I play a key, if all the notes, all the knobs are down, I play something, I just get nothing. And instead we get a click. We just get a click, and it's because everything is super, close to zero. So it's super fast. So this is going to shape how the volume goes out. So I'm going to start with the attack. Now the attack, the decay, and the release are time-based knobs, but the sustain is going to be a level. So the attack is going to be how long it's going to take to go from 0 to all the way up in amplitude, volume. So if I go to this value and just, do something like that, it's going to take a certain amount of time. Maybe you cannot see it. It's going to be 1.7 seconds. So if I play it, it's going to take some time. It's going to go up. And then at some point, it's going to die. I'm going to give it a little bit more time, like 2.5. I'm going to press a key in 3, 2, 1. The sound goes up. It's going to take 2 seconds, 2 point something seconds. And then the sound is going to die. So this is going to control how the sound goes from 0 all the way up. Up, it dies. So, sometimes we don't want this for the sound to die very abruptly. We want to decide, maybe to make it go down on a smooth way. So this is going to be the decay. Now, on some synthesizers, you have a separate knob for the release. We're going to talk about what the release is in a second. But in this case, you have the same, this is going to be controlling the decay and the release at the same time. So if I go right here, this is going to decide how we go down in volume. So if I do something like pretty much the same, maybe 2 point something, it means that if I play a key, it's going to go up, and at some point, it needs to go down. And how long it's going to take for it to go down is going to be this knob. That's why we are slowly going down in volume. Goes up, and then it's going to take some time going down. Now then, since this one, it's using the release means that what's going to happen when we release the key. And right now I'm pressing and holding, but I'm never releasing. Still, the sound it dies because we entered the decay stage. Right, but what happens if I release the key before we go full on the decay? So I'm going to be playing a key, and I'm going to release it. So when I release it, then the release is going to kick in. It's going to go all the way up. I'm going to release it before we enter the decay. So now the release, it means that how slowly we go down to full silence when we release the key. So I'm going to release it, and then we enter the release stage. So then we have the sustain. Now the sustain, it's not a time-based control. It's a level control, an amount or value. So when we move it, notice it says it's going to say, it's going to give you a percentage, not a time. So the thing is that right now, when we are playing a key, it's going up and then it goes down, but I'm still holding the key. So we don't have sustain. We don't have the ability to sustain it at some point. If you go all the way up on this value, right here, you have made a mistake right there. Right there, you have a representation of how the sustain is going to work. If I go all the way up, what you're doing, you're not using the decay. So it will never enter the decay stage. So you're just like disabling this. You're not using it. So this means when I play a key, it's going to go all the way up very slowly because we have a slow attack, and it's going to sustain right there at the top, and it will never go down. And the only way to make it go to full silence is going to be releasing the key, and then it's going to enter the release stage, and I release and we enter the release stage. Now the thing is that right now the sustain is all the way up, but you don't have to do this. You just can go in somewhere in between, and this means that the sound is going to go all the way up, and then it's going to enter the decay. It's going to go down a little bit, but then it's going to sustain at some point. And take a look at the spectrum. If I play a key, we go up, and then it's going to slowly go down, but it's going to sustain right there. It will never go to full silence. If I make it even, a little bit less, I play a key, it's going to go up, enter the decay, it's going to go down, but it will stay right there. Very silent, but it's there. And when I release the key, it's going to slowly enter the release stage. Okay, so now, since I'm sure that you understood this is going to be very important for the cycling envelope and to understand filter modulation, because we will use the same envelope to modulate this control. Now still, when we play a key, we can hear, or what happens is that the envelope will trigger and it will just shape the sound. And if I play a new key, well, the same thing will happen. Now we are not in polyphonic, we are, paraphonic, we are monophonic. So when I play a key, the envelope is going to trigger, shape the sound. I'm going to play a new one, shape the sound again, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now the question is, what does the amp mod does? So this one, it will tell the synth not to use the ADSR as an amp envelope. So it will not use it to control how the volume or how the sound goes out. But still, we need an envelope, or we need some kind of instruction that is going to tell the synthesizer when to shut up when we play a key, or when to start playing when we play a key, and when to shut up when we release the key. So the amp mod, when it's on, it means that you're using this envelope to control the amp, how the sound goes out. It's the amp envelope. Now, if I turn this off, now we are not using this envelope to control how the sound goes out. Now, the amp envelope, it's going to be a gate. It's going to be an on and off type of a thing. So if I play a key, it's going to play as soon as I press a key. Now, when I release this key, there's no motion, there's no transition. It's just going to go to full silence. It's like an on, off, on, off, on, off. So that's how this works. So when we have it off, it's not going to use this, and it's going to use a gate or maybe an AR, which is maybe not even an R. It's maybe a release with all the settings down, but we don't get it. We just get an on and off type of a thing. Now, this is very useful with some sounds. Maybe you're using an arpeggio and you don't need to use the envelope. Well, you just can turn this off and you just get that gate type of behavior. Now, still, this is a very cool thing, because once you do this, you're not occupying the envelope to be aware or to control how the sound goes out. You have a free envelope that you can use on something else. And since you have a mod matrix, you can reuse this envelope to modulate whatever you want, resonance, cutoff, these knobs, whatever it is that you want. So since you're not using it to control volume. Now, when this is on, you are going to be using this as an envelope, but also you will use it to modulate the filter cutoff. So the same envelope is going to control how the sound goes out and how much modulation you're going to be doing on this one. But maybe you don't want this. You don't want to use the same envelope to control two things, both things at the same time. You turn it off, now it's off, you get the on and off type of behavior, and now the filter cutoff, the envelope is just going to be used to modulate this if you're providing a value right here. And now I'm going to go to a default patch, and since we are talking about cutoff modulation, we need to talk about the filter amount. And again, starting on new patch, right there, we just have the same thing. Now the amp mod is going to stay on, just going to leave it on for now, or maybe just going to go off. So right here we have the filter amount. I have the cutoff all the way down. I'm going to go right there. We are cutting a lot of frequencies. So what I want to do, I want to play a key, and as soon as I play a key, I want this knob to go up and then to go down when I play a key. That's what we want. We want that modulation. So we do it with this envelope. Now this envelope, this control, is going to decide how much of that modulation you're going to be doing. If you're going to be really aggressive, or you want to do just a little bit. So this is going to be the attack, the decay, and sustain. We are using this envelope and how much of this envelope we want to use. Now you can go into negative values or you can go into positive values. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So in this case, I'm going to positive values. I'm going to adjust the envelopes, maybe something like that. And I'm going to do a lot of cutoff. So since we are saying, dude, I want you to do a lot, maybe 50 or 60 of the cutoff, the envelope is going to be controlling how this goes out. So if I play a key, we just get pretty much nothing, right? We just get a pluck, and it's because all of this is all the way down. So maybe I want a slow transition of going up, then we want a slow decay, and then maybe a little bit of sustain. So now whatever it is that we are doing here, we are doing it right here. So this is the way we do a cutoff modulation with the envelope, with the main envelope. Now, one thing that you need to notice is when you move this, when you're not on zero, let me just go back to zero, the lights are off. So when you move this, the light is going to be on. It's going to say the cutoff, it's modulating the envelope. And we will talk about how this works in detail, but remember, as soon as you move it, this is going to tell you, dude, you're using the cutoff, or you're using the envelope to modulate the cutoff. Now, we can go all the way, 100%. It's going to be a lot more aggressive. If I, do a little bit of resonance, we can see it modulating right there, very clearly. Now, sometimes if we are too aggressive, maybe it's a little bit too much, so you need to tone it down. Right, so one more thing that you can do with this one is to go into negatives. This means that instead of modulating this from here, from all the way down, let's say, here, and then go up, and then go down to the same position, we are going backwards. So this is maybe a perfect example is going to be starting right there. Now when I play a key and I'm holding the key, this is what happens. It starts very aggressively and then it starts growing. And it's because we are modulating this backwards. And this is a feature that a lot of synthesizers have, so it's not very weird, just the way it works. Right. Now since all of this is just very related to the mod matrix, let's just cover how the mod matrix works, because we need to keep talking about how the cycling envelope works, how the LFO works, and everything else. And we really need to know how this operates. If we don't know how this works, we are going to be really confused. So let's talk about this one. Right, so the mod matrix, this one, it's very simple and straightforward to use. Even though you have only one single button, it's very easy to use. Most of the action is going to happen right here and right here. This is why I'm just focusing the camera on this section. Essentially, how this works is that something is going to be modulated with something else. So we have the watt is going to be the modulated, and this is going to be the top row. The watt is going to be pitch, wave, timbre, cutoff, and then we have 3 assignable places. So this is going to be the watt we are going to be modulating. Now, since we need to decide who is going to be doing that modulation to the watt, we need to decide who is going to be doing that modulation. So this is going to be the left side, this one. This one is going to modulate this side. And we have a bunch of options like the cycle envelope, which is this. We have the main envelope. We have right here the LFO. We have it right here. And then we have the pressure, which is going to be Aftertouch, and then key and arp, which is going to be this section, pretty much the key bed. Right, so I'm going to go to a default patch and we're going to start using them. You know, we have a default preset, and as soon as you change on a default preset, this is going to start blinking. So when it's blinking, it's waiting for you to make a selection to select the patch point. Now, since nothing is selected, you're not doing anything, at some point, it's going to go off. Now, so we are going to be handling this with this. We have a rotary encoder, and then we can press it down. So what we need to do is just select what we want to modulate with who, right? So we just need to keep toggling, just moving this and select a combination. So we need to match the what with the who. So let's say that we want to modulate pitch, which is going to be the first one. And these ones that you have, the ones you have right here, you just cannot change them. They are just hardwired to the synthesizer. You can modulate pitch, wave, because it's going to be this one, timbre is going to be this one, and then cutoff, which is going to be this one. But then, you know, we're going to talk about the assign in a minute. So you just need to keep scrolling until you match, you know, whatever it is that you want to modulate with the who. In this case, we want the pitch with the envelope. So we are right there. So once you're standing right there, you need to make a decision. You need to make a call. It's going to show you right here. If I move it like that, notice that it's giving you right here the information of what you're doing. So it's telling you, okay, so you're trying to modulate the with the envelope, the pitch. So once you're ready to do something, what you need to do is you need to press down. So I'm going to stand right here. This is what we want to do. I'm going to press it down. As soon as we press down, the light is going to be steady. And right here, everything is going to light up, just telling you how much you're going to be doing. So let me stand right there. So when you move this encoder, you're going to be deciding how much of the envelope is going to be modulating the pitch, right? So you can go into positives just like this, or you can go into negatives, you know, to the other side, just like that. So if you stand at 0, it means that there's no modulation happening, but the patch point is still, you know, still there. Let me just go to 0. So we have 0, but notice that the light, it's not blinking. It means that this was already assigned, and the only difference is that you're not providing a value to do a modulation, but it is already assigned. So in this case, I want to do a modulation of the pitch with this envelope, with this one we have right here. So I'm going to be providing some value. Maybe I'm going to go to, I don't know, something like the 30s, 40s, and as soon as we do so, we are going to be getting it. Now, this envelope is controlling the pitch. Now, I need to select something that, you know, we can really hear, maybe a slow attack and maybe some sustain, something like that. And I'm going to be playing a key, and this is going to modulate the pitch up. Then we have the decay, and we are going to be sustaining at that point. It's that simple. We just make a selection, how much modulation we want to do. We can go really aggressive. It's going to modulate up, and then just go back to the sustain, or you can go into negatives. Remember, you can go the other way, and instead of going up in pitch, it's going to go down in pitch, and then go back to the sustain. In this case, I want something a little bit more obvious, so I'm going to be going to maybe something like that, you know, to positives. Right, so let's do another one just for fun. Let's do LFO and timbre. You know, we have the timbre right here, and we have the LFO right there, so we can use them. Now, right now, if I move the encoder, it's going to start modulating or just changing the value of that patch point, which is, you know, not something we want. I want to go out of this. So once you do so, you click to browse, and it says click to browse. It's going to be blinking, but when you move away from that patch point, this one stays on, and when it's blinking, it's waiting for you to select a new destination. So we want to modulate timbre, this one, and if you wonder which one is timbre, it's going to be this one, and we want to do it with an LFO. So I need to go to the other row, and there we go. We have LFO and timbre. So we click to assign a value, and I'm going to be going all the way up, or maybe something, you know, something like that. And the LFO now it's going to give us that modulation with the timbre. And we are modulating this, you know, up and down with an LFO. We are going to be talking about the LFOs in a minute. You can go really aggressively. And remember that we can always go into negatives. If I go all the other way, we can go into negatives. Pretty simple. If you want to get out of here, you just click to browse, and there you go. You have your 2 patch points right there. And remember, at some point when you're not touching it, it's just going to go off. Remember that we can modulate the cutoff if we do something, maybe something like that and something like that, you know, with a little bit of resonance. We can modulate the cutoff with the filter amount, but we also have the chance to do it right here. Now, if we do it from here, this one is going to turn it on because we are using this. But we can just, you know, go to 0 on this one. It's going to go off, and we can manually say that the cutoff can be modulated by something else. In this case, I'm just going to go to cutoff and LFO. I'm going to click to assign value, and we do the same trick. Go all the way up, you know, just select the value. And now the cutoff is going to be modulated with the LFO. Right, so very easy to do. If you want to go out, just push it and you are out. And if we move it away, at some point, again, it's going to go off. Now, what if you want to delete a modulation assignment? So the only thing you need to do, since you can navigate, you need to stand on the one you want to delete. Let's say I want to delete that one. And the only thing you need to do is to press and hold this button, and it will just delete it. So remember, we're going to stand right there. I'm going to press and hold it, and at some point, it's just going to blink faster, and it's going to delete it. If I go away, notice that the light right there is not steady. So we are deleting that modulation, that patch assignment, and that's the way we do it. Now, still, you might have a lot of modulations right there, and maybe you want to delete them all. Again, this is pretty much the same idea, but now it's a shift function, and we're going to start talking about shift functions because we have a lot. So you need to press the shift and hold it, and then go to the matrix, press and hold, and it's going to delete all the modulations. As soon as I remove it, notice that they are gone. So notice that all the destinations that we have available, the hardwired destinations, are not a lot. You know, you have pitch, wave, timbre, and cutoff, and this is just not enough. So you have 3 assignable functions or modulations or destinations in this case, and these are just pretty simple to assign. So what you need to do is you don't need to stand anywhere. You just need to press the button on each of the assigned. If you want to assign the number 1, and it's a very small button. If you have small hands or small fingers, this is going to be a plus. If you have big fingers, it's just going to suck. But you know, you need to press and hold. Once you press and hold, it's going to say move destination. So what you need to do is just to move a knob that you're going to be assigning as a destination. Now, almost everything can be assigned, but there are some things that you cannot really assign as a destination. For example, you cannot assign the volume of the master. You cannot assign shift and knob functions, you know, while you're holding shift and moving some value. You cannot modulate or assign buttons, the buttons that you have right here. And you cannot assign the amp mod. But everything else is just pretty much assignable. All right, so let's just use it. Let's say we want to modulate something that we don't have available right here, like the resonance, for example. And I'm just going to go start with a new patch. So we know that we have no chance right here to modulate the resonance with maybe, I don't know, an LFO or something like that. So we hold the assign is awaiting for us to move something. And I'm going to move this one. And as soon as I move it, it's going to say, dude, okay, so now I am assigned to the resonance. You release it, and that is it. This assign is going to remember on the preset that this one is going to be resonance, and the other ones, if you use them, they're going to be something else. Now, I'm going to go to a default patch, and we're going to do it again. But once you go to the assigned, they are already assigned to something. Notice that this one, it says a VCO par 5. The other one is going to be the amount. The other one is going to be envelope to cutoff. Now, this is a very special example because we can modulate other patch points with the assign, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. Now, in this case, I want to use the assign to move the resonance. Just going to hold it and move the resonance, and we are going to be moving it with the LFO, right? So we want to modulate the resonance with the LFO. So we need to scroll and keep scrolling until we get to the LFO row, and then stand on the assign. I'm going to press it. And then it's going to ask you how much of the LFO you want to use on the resonance. I'm going to do something like that. I'm going to go up, and maybe I'm going to go to the cutoff, do something like this, provide a little bit of resonance. And now we can hear, I'm going to go a little bit more aggressively. We can hear that the resonance is going up and down. If I go right here, I can go a lot less. And now we can hear that it's pretty much not doing it. If I go really aggressively, we get it. Okay, so I'm starting with the default patch, and I want to give you the example of what we have right here. When you press and hold the assign 3, it's telling you envelope and then cutoff. Why is doing that, right? Remember, we can assign the 3 to modulate a different patch point. But first, we need to do something, right? So I'm going to go to the LFO right here, and I'm going to modulate the cutoff, something that we can easily detect. And I'm going to be doing some modulation so we can hear it. I'm going to be doing a little bit of cutoff, a little bit of resonance so we can easily detect it. And as soon as I play this, we can hear that the cutoff, it's being modulated with the LFO that we are assigning right there, right? Now the thing is that as soon as I play the key, and for now I'm just going to turn off the amp mod. As soon as I play a key, it's just starting. Yeah, it just fires right away. And maybe this is not what I want. I want to press a key and have a slow introduction to the modulation, and then I want it to go down. So that's why we have the assign, this assign mode. So in this case, I'm going to be going right here. We want to modulate this patch point. So we need to instruct the assign 3 that we want to modulate this one. So what we do, we press and hold, and instead of moving something right here, we are going to be moving and selecting the patch point we want to be modulate with the assign 3. So we want to modulate the cutoff and the LFO. And right here is going to tell you, dude, you're doing LFO and cutoff. If I move on to move out to a different one, it's just going to tell you. In this case, it's going to be LFO and cutoff, right? So that's what we want to modulate. I'm going to release it, and now this one, it's trying to modulate this. Now, the thing is that we still need to use something of this, the who, to modulate the what that it's assigned here. So, okay, so we need to decide what we want to use. So we need to move to a different, different who. In this case, I'm going to be using the cycle envelope. This one, the cycle envelope, which is going to be the one we have right here. And I'm going to be standing on the assign 3 because remember, the assign 3 is doing a modulation and the modulation is going to be controlling this one. So as soon as we stand right here and I press it, it's going to say the cycle envelope, it's modifying the LFO, which is the patch point we just selected. So now if I play something, and of course we need to provide a value, now this one is going to modulate this. Now my mistake is right now that I'm going to stand right here, I'm doing modulation. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to say, bro, I just don't want to do anything. I'm going to go all the way down and have no modulation, right? I want this to decide the assign 3, how much modulation you're going to do. So if I go back to the cycle envelope and I just select it, I need to decide how much of this envelope we're going to be doing. In this case, I'm just going to go to a normal envelope, so it's going to be very easy to recognize. I'm just going to be doing a little bit of attack, a little bit of release, and the amount is just pretty much all the way up, so we can easily hear this. We're going to talk about this one in a minute. So as soon as I play a key, notice that the modulation doesn't kick right away. It's doing a rise and it's doing a fall. We have attack and a release. So it's modulating the value that we have right here, that we assigned right there. Right, I play it slowly, modulates the value up, and then goes down. So what we are doing, essentially, we are controlling whatever we have right there, here, and what we do with the assign or the envelope in this case, is that this is just going up, following the envelope, and then going back down with the envelope. That is what we are doing. We are modulating a patch point with a different patch point. Okay, so if you think about this, there's a lot of power right here because you can do a lot of modulations and get, really experimental with this. I would still need to cover some of things like the pressure and then the key, which is essentially key tracking with a key bed. And we need to talk about the key bed because it's a little bit special. But first, we need to cover the cycling envelope, how this works, and we need to cover the LFO. Right, so I'm going to go to a new patch so we can start from the scratch, and I'm going to be using the LFO. Now, remember, if you want to use it, you need to assign it somewhere. And in this case, I'm going to go to pitch, and I'm going to stand on the LFO right there. I'm going to press it, and I'm going to be assigning a value so we can easily hear that is going up and down in pitch, right? Pretty simple. So we need to talk about the LFO. Now the LFO, it's very simple. You have a rate, which is going to be how fast it's going to go. And then you have a waveform. Now if I press something, I'm going to be going right here. And you need to take a look at right there at the top. It's going to show you how the waveform is just going to go. We can go really fast or really slow. At this point, it says 1, 4, and everything else. So this is using subdivisions. Now, if you're syncing this synthesizer with something else, it's going to be synced to that BPM, to that tempo. Now, in this case, I'm not syncing this to anything. So what it's going to be using is going to be using this rate, which is going to be the BPM that you have on your synthesizer for your sequencer or your arp. So if I play this and I go down in tempo, notice it's telling you right there your BPM. And if I keep going up, it's just going to go faster. So this is your main BPM if you're not syncing this. So when you are standing right there and you press it, you go out of the sync mode. So this means that now this will work in hertz instead of subdivisions, and you're not syncing it anymore, right? Pretty simple. Now you have different waveforms. If I play something, this is going to be your waveform control. Maybe I'm going to be going a little bit slower so we can easily follow it. So we have a sine wave, we have a triangle, we have a saw, and it's going to be a ramp up, not a ramp down. You cannot change it. And then we have square, which is going to be an on and off type of thing. And then we have the other ones. This one is going to be sample and hold. Now, if you're thinking, what is sample and hold? Well, sample and hold is random. It's a way of saying random. I'm not going to explain how it works behind the scenes because we have no control of how it works behind the scenes. We just can decide how fast and how slow. But notice that all the changes are very abrupt. And if I go faster, you're gonna notice this until we get that computer type of sound. So it's gonna go fast, up and down, making changes randomly. Then you have the other one. Now the other one is the same as sample and hold, but this one is a smooth sample and hold. We don't get those aggressive changes, but it's gonna smoothly transition to one random spot to the next one random instruction to the next one. And that is the main difference between the sample and hold and this one. It's just a smooth transition. So let me stand on right here. Let me stand on a square and I'm gonna go slower. Now behind the scenes, how this works. Notice how it works? And we need to talk about the retrigger. How it works behind the scenes is that when we play a key, the LFO will not restart, will not retrigger. So it means that it's running freely behind these scenes. It doesn't care if I play a key or I just, do something else. It doesn't care about that. It's constantly going up and down and, behind the scenes it's just not listening to anything. So it means that when we play a key, the LFO will not retrigger and start from the beginning. Now, sometimes this is just cool, but in this case, it's just creating me a problem. Because when I play a key, the pitch could be up or it could be down depending on where the LFO is. So sometimes you don't want this behavior. You can change this. If you go to utility, right here, you can have a lot of options right there. So you need to go to, utility, of course. Right here, the first one, the preset, you need to go to preset. Then you press to enter, and then you can have a bunch of options. We're going to talk about these options. But if you keep scrolling down, you have one that says LFO retrigger. And by default is off. So if I turn it on, I'm going to be saying out. I'm going to turn it on. And now when I play a key, it will always start from the beginning. Notice that it starts always from the higher peak, which is going to be the higher peak of the square. It will never start down. So you can always go back to utility, go to preset, and everything that we are doing right now, when you change it on preset, it means that you're modifying the values or, the configuration of the current preset, not the whole synth. So you can, you can go right there and just disable it back. You go off and then you get out of the utility and you're back of the, to the other mode. Right, so let's talk about the cycling envelope. And at the end of the day, this is going to be a normal envelope, but with a twist. It can work on a different way. And I'm going to be going to a default patch as always. So we pretty much have nothing. Now, right here, you have different modes. The first one is going to be a normal envelope. And this works like an ADSR, or pretty much the same thing we have right here. The only difference is that we have different names: the rise, the fall, the hold, and sustain. And we have different values because this can work on a different way. But this one, if we move it, notice that it works pretty much like an attack, like we have right here. Right? So this is what we get. And the other one is going to be the decay stage. And then we have a sustain. So notice that it looks like an ADSR. And then the amount is going to be how much of this we are going to be using as modulation. We can go, use it on very small amounts, or we can go aggressive all the way to 100%. Now, this will affect how much we are doing right here. Because by default, this is not connected to anything. If we keep playing and moving this, nothing is going to happen. We need to assign it to something on the matrix. So one thing that you need to remember, and I'm going to do something like that, because right now it just works like an ADSR. Notice that the shape that you have right here and the shape right there. So if I go to the attack on the amp envelope, notice that there's a tiny curve. There's a tiny curve right there. And on this one, we don't have that. It's pretty linear. And the the shape is going to be that. And you have these options all over the place. The blue, the sequence, the swing, and then the shape. So these are shift functions. That's why it's blue. So when you hold this one and you move this control, it's going to affect the shape. So you can stay on linear, you can go to a logarithmic or exponential. That's the whole trick. So that's why, you get it. All right, so we need to use it somewhere. I'm going to stay on envelope and I'm going to be going to the matrix. And we are going to be staying on pitch because it's something that, very easy to understand, to hear. I'm going to assign it and I'm going to be doing some amount, something like that. Now, if I play a key, it's instantly doing its job, right? So we have some modulation, we have a long attack, a long, in this case, rise and fall, and then we have some sustain. I'm going to go all the way down, and we're just not going to get anything. So if we want a slow introduction to that pitch, it's going to slowly go up. And again, since this one works like an ADSR, an envelope, normal envelope, it's just going to do that. At some point, it's going to, reach its maximum point, and it's just going to go back to whatever key I'm playing, because we are doing pitch. Now, again, if I'm going to go, not so fast, not so slow, and we want to introduce a little bit of a fall, it's going to go up, and at some point, it's going to go back to the default value. Maybe we want to stay somewhere in between. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, and stay not on this key, staying somewhere around there. And the amount, and remember, is going to decide how much of this modulation we want. So if we want less or more, we just go down and up. Pretty easy and understandable. Now, the main difference is the other ones. We have a run and we have a loop. Now, as soon as we go to the run, this one is going to change. Now, the run works like an LFO, and it's running free. That's how it works. So as soon as I play a key, let me just play this one. We are going to go maybe all the way up in the amount. It's going to run free. It works like an LFO, but now we have a different shape. We can go even faster, maybe shorter decay, no sustain. And that is what we are going to be getting. Now, if I move the sustain, now the sustain doesn't work like a sustain. Notice that we get right there, like a line right there. It's not abruptly going down when we are on the envelope right here. If I select the value, it's just not doing that. So it means that it's a hold now. So when we play a key, instead of going directly to the sustain stage, it's holding all the way at the top. So if I play a key, let me just play it. It's going to stay right there. Sometime it's going to go down and it's going to go over and, go that motion, the one we are doing here. If I go like that, no sustain, it's going to go up and down as soon as it hits the maximum peak. But this one works like an LFO. If I start tapping it, like we did with the LFO, where we are not re-triggering, this is just going to do that. It will not re-trigger. It doesn't care if I'm pressing a key. It will always run constant behind the scenes. And that's the main difference between run and between loop. If I go to loop, we still keep the same rise, fall, hold, and amount. It works exactly the same way. But when I play a key, it will always start from the beginning of the loop. And if I keep pressing, it's just gonna loop. So that's the only difference. The run is gonna retrigger, and the loop, the run is not gonna retrigger, and the loop, it will retrigger. Right, so I'm gonna go to a default patch and start over again. And I want to talk about the simple thing that you get on a lot of synthesizers, but maybe you don't know what it is. So I'm gonna be showing you right here. If you go to utility and then you go to preset, inside the preset you can decide how the envelope legato it's gonna work. And by default, it's gonna be always off. This is how it works. Now, if you don't know how legato works, let me just show you right now. It's off, right? So I'm gonna be going to the main preset. I'm gonna be doing some attacks, something like that, some decay, and maybe a little bit of sustain, something like that. So as soon as I play a key, I'm gonna be playing it right now. This is gonna be following the amp envelope, right? It's gonna go up, and then at some point, let me just do it a little bit more obvious. It's gonna go up in volume, go down. I'm gonna make it slower, go and go up, and then goes down, and then goes down in volume, and it's gonna sustain right there. But as soon as I play a new key, this is gonna trigger again. It's gonna go up in volume and then go down. But I'm still holding a key. And let me just do it right here. I'm gonna be playing it, goes up, goes down. I'm gonna keep holding this one, and I'm gonna be playing a new key right here. This one is gonna re-trigger the envelope, and it goes up in volume, and it goes down to the sustain stage. But I'm still holding a key. I'm pressing two keys. Since we are not in paraphonic mode, we are listening to this key. If I play a new key, it's gonna re-trigger the envelope. But this means that every time that we are playing a new key, even though we are holding other keys, this envelope will re-trigger. What happens if we go to the other mode? I'm gonna go to preset, and then I'm gonna go all the way down. I'm gonna go to envelope legato. I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna turn it off. In this case, turn it on. So I'm gonna go back. In this case, I'm gonna play a key. It's gonna go up and down in volume. We know that. So what happens when I play new keys while I'm holding this one? That's what happens. That's the legato on. It means that the envelope will not re-trigger if I'm still holding a key. And sometimes this is very useful when you play fast, we play fast. As soon as I release it and play a new key, the envelope will re-trigger because we release the keys. Right? So the keys are a little bit special in this one, and now we are focusing right here because we're going to be using the keyboard. And the keypad, it's fine, it's good, it's very useful. Sometimes it's really cool to press the keys, but it's not a regular keyboard. And if you're very used to use a regular keyboard, it's just a little bit weird to get it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to the keys. Now, still, you can always hook up right at the back the standard keyboard and just control it from there. Now first let's talk about the velocity. I'm gonna go to a default patch, and as soon as I press a key, right, it's gonna do that. And if I play hard, it's gonna do the same thing. So velocity is just not modifying the amp right here. It's just it's not listening to velocity, but it can. If you go to the utility and you go to the preset right there, you're gonna keep scrolling. Maybe it's too small because now the camera is all the way back. But at some point, if you keep scrolling, it's going to say Velo Amp Mod. So if you go there, it's gonna ask you, okay, so we can detect velocity on these keys and how much of the amp you're gonna be allowing. So in this case, it's gonna go from 0 to 10. I'm gonna go, right now it's 0. I'm gonna be selecting 10 and then enter, and I'm gonna go out. So now, if we play softer, the volume is gonna be less. And if I play hard, the volume is gonna be just louder, just gonna go loud. Soft, and then loud. So this can recognize velocity. But still, it's just a little bit weird. It feels weird because these are not standard keys. Now, if I go to a new patch, since we are starting a new preset and that option is on preset, it doesn't care if we play soft or we play hard, we are back to, 0. So now, right there, let's talk about the important part, which is going to be press. So the press is going to be, we can use it as a modulation source. So press can be either velocity, like we just did, or it can be aftertouch. So yeah, you can use aftertouch in this one. Now, since aftertouch is the pressure you apply to the keys when you play them on a regular keyboard, it's just a little bit easier to feel, right? To do it. Now, on this one, it feels a little bit weird and it cannot work the same way because it cannot detect how much pressure you're doing right here. So how this keybed, this keyboard is going to detect aftertouch is going to be the amount of skin that you use on the keys. So if I play with my tip, it's going to be that. But if I play with my tip and then I roll over, it's going to be using it as an aftertouch instruction. Now remember that you can go to utility, and if you go to preset, you keep going down. At some point, it's going to say press mode. So if I go there, the default one, the default press mode is going to be aftertouch, but you can change it to velocity if you want. Now in this case, I'm going to keep it aftertouch because again, I want to show you how this works. So we want to use aftertouch to modulate something on the matrix. So I'm going to go there and I'm going to be going to the press, right? So we are standing on the press and we can do pitch. Why not? I'm going to be going there and doing a value, and I'm going to be doing something like 40, something like that. So now press is going to be aftertouch. So this, again, if we play with the tip, nothing is going to happen because it will do aftertouch with the amount of skin. If we play with your tip, nothing is going to happen. But if I go right there and play with the tip and then I roll over the key, the amount of skin I'm pressing right here is going to detect it as aftertouch, and that it's just, is doing the modulation. And this is something actually super cool with this keyboard. Sometimes it's easier, it's maybe easier to do it right here with maybe with a standard keyboard. And it's fun, And I'm not pressing, I'm just rolling my finger on top of the key. That's how it works. So the bad part is that you need to be really aware that you're using aftertouch as a modulation source. So if you're playing and you make a mistake and you put a little bit more skin, it's going to trigger that modulation, and maybe you just don't want to trigger the modulation, right? So it's very easy. You can easily make a mistake with this. So again, it's completely up to you if you want to connect the different keyboard right there at the back. So one cool thing is that the aftertouch is polyphonic. Now, if we enable paraphonic, and maybe go up in volume just a little bit, we can, play a key. And we can still do the same thing. But now remember, we are in paraphonic. We can play up to 4 different keys. 4 different keys. So if I play this one and I play this one, I can do the modulation for this voice, the one I'm playing right here. And I can do a modulation for this one separately from this one. So we have polyphonic aftertouch. Now, one cool thing that you get when you go to utility is that if you go all the way down, not on preset, if you go all the way down on the MISC, you have a lot of options that work. When you change them, they modify the behavior of the whole synth, all the presets. So if you scroll down, you have the keyboard sensitivity, that's going to affect the sensitivity of the keys. The next one is going to be aftertouch curve, right? So you can modify or alter the curve of the aftertouch. It's going to be exponential, logarithmic, or linear, right? So pretty simple. I'm gonna leave it on log. And then what you get after that, let me just find it right there, is going to be the velocity curve. So you can affect or change the velocity curve, just like, we did with the aftertouch curve. And if you want to always, because you're changing the settings for the whole synth, doesn't care about the patch, it's the whole synth. If you want to always go back to the default configuration, you can always scroll down and reset the settings, right? I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to reset the settings, and you're back to factory settings. Right, so let's go back to an initial patch, whatever, and now we need to talk about the ARP, and then we're going to be talking about the sequencer. Now, this looks a little bit confusing because we have a lot of options right here, the spice and the dies and all of this, but it's a very simple thing to understand. So if we start with the ARP, which we have very simple options, the sequencer is just going to be a piece of cake. So right here, you have the option to select an ARP or either a sequencer, and by default, it's just going to be just going to be nothing. Maybe it's just a little bit too loud. So by default, it's just going to be nothing. Now to enable this, right here, it says you can choose an ARP or a sequencer. So if you're not holding shift and you press this, you're going to be enabling the ARP. Now the buttons that we have right here are very relevant to what we are going to be doing right here. And all of them, they have a secondary function, or maybe a function depending on where we are. So if you're on ARP, maybe the first thing going up is going to be what it's going to be doing. But if we work in a sequencer, now this one is going to be the A and this one is going to be the B. So they have different functions depending on where we are standing. Now first we're going to start with the ARP, and it's going to be very simple to understand. So if I play something, it's not going to do an ARP, and I'm going to go a little bit lower. So I'm going to go right there and just toggle this on. As soon as we toggle on, it's going to say arpeggiator on, and this works as a standard arpeggiator. If I play a key, it's just going to play it. I play a second key, it's just going to arpeggiate through the different notes. Pretty simple, just like a normal arpeggiator. Now if I play it like that and do something like that, this one is going to affect the rate, how fast we are going. So if I move it up like that, it's going to go faster, or it's going to be going slower. And if we're syncing to something else, we can, press it, and now we are using subdivisions. So we are going to be using subdivisions to whatever tempo we had from before, right? So I'm going to go right there. Now, when you release the keys, the ARP is going to stop playing, but right there, the first option is going to be hold. So if I play a key, make an ARP, and press this one, and it releases the keys, it's just going to hold it for me. And right here, you just can go and just change the speed. You go faster, and you can go slower. And right there, you have the shift, and the secondary function for this one is going to be swing. So you can do swing, right? Very simple. These are very standard functions that you get on a lot of synthesizers. So if you toggle this off, it's just going to stop holding the keys for us. So right now, the ARP, it's just very simple. It's going up, and it's because right here you have the different things you can do. You can go up, you can go order, you can go random, and you can go to pattern. Now, this ones are very simple to understand, but the pattern is just a little bit special. So first one is the up. As soon as you play something, it's just going to start here going up to this key and then start over and over and over and over again. But this one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to remember the order of which you play the keys and then, do that pattern. That's why it says order. So if I play this one, if I play this one, if I play this one, and then this one, and then this one, it's going to keep that order in mind, and it's just going to do the ARP based on, the order of the notes. So that's why, it's called order. The next one is going to be random. If I play something, make a chord, it's just going to be creating like a random. And since it's random, we just cannot predict it. Right? Right. So the pattern, it's a little bit like the random, but it works on a different way. Now, when we go to random, and we cannot recognize it because we just have 3 chords but this is how it works. When we just create a chord, it's just gonna randomize the order on each loop. It's just randomizing, right? Just randomizing the notes. Now the pattern works it just works a little bit different. And notice that you get an icon right there. It's like giving you a description of how this works. Let me just toggle it off and on again. It does something and then restarts on a loop like that. So it will create a pattern behind the scenes as soon as you play a keys or you make a chord or you do something. It will create a pattern in behind the scenes memory, and then it will just repeat that pattern until you release the keys. So let me just do it again. I'm going to be doing something like that. And I'm going to be holding. As soon as I release the keys, that pattern is just going to repeat over and over again. That's how it works. It's just not random again. It's not random. It keeps in memory a pattern. Now, there are some things that you need to know, because maybe you're wondering, okay, so if this is creating a pattern for us, when we save the patch, that same pattern is going to be stored in the memory of the patch. No, this is a performance option. When you play the keys, it's just going to create a pattern and repeat it, as long as you're holding the keys. As soon as you release the keys and you press again, it's going to generate a new random pattern. It's going to just generate a new thing. So you cannot store it on the memory of the patch. Every time you play a key, it just creates a different pattern, and so on and so on and so on. Now, there are some things that you need to be aware when you use the pattern. So I'm going to be playing a lower key, a higher key, and a higher key. and I'm going to release it. So the pattern behind the scenes, what it will do, will create this pattern as soon as you play a new key. But the root note, the lower key that you press, is going to be used as a root note. So most of the times in the sequence, the low note is going to play more oftenly, and the other ones are just a little bit less frequent than the low root note. And this is how it works behind the scenes, how it works by default. Now, another thing that it's happening right here is that the sequence that it's creating in memory behind the scenes has an amount of steps, like a step sequencer. And it's because this is like a function from the sequence. So you can decide how long this pattern is going to be. And by default, it's 16 steps. So it's creating a pattern with 16 steps with different values. Now, sometimes this could get crazy because 16 steps, maybe it's just a lot. So what you can do, you can go to utility right there, and inside the preset, you have some options to decide how you can manage your sequencer. And let me just go right there. So right here is going to say sequencer length. Let me just adjust the camera a little bit more. So it's going to say sequencer length. As soon as I go in, it's going to say that the sequence length is going to be 16. So by default, it's 16. But you can go lower. You just can make it shorter. And now you can make it 4, for example. And now the pattern, it's going to be very repetitive because it's just 4 steps. So wait, I'm going to leave it at 4 and see what happens. I'm going to go back. I'm going to be holding again. Remember, now we have 4 patterns, 4 steps. I'm going to be playing it. And as soon as I release, notice that the pattern, it's very predictable, right? It's super predictable. And if I play something new, it's going to create a new pattern. I release it. And again, it's just 4 different steps. It's very predictable. You can always go to utility and change the amount of steps just to get, maybe a different pattern. Now, this is not the same with the random. If we do a random, and let me just hold it. I'm going to do random. I'm going to release it. And we can easily hear now, it's just a random, right? So it depends on what you want to use. You want to use random or just use the sequence. And one other thing that you get right here on the utility, and when you go to preset, is going to be let me just find it first. There we go. So the default gate length. So when you use an ARP, depends on what is the gate length, the notes are going to be wide or the notes are going to be very sharp. So by default, it's going to be 50%, but you can change this behavior. I'm just going to be playing a chord. It doesn't matter. Maybe I'm going to go to up and I'm going to hold it. And I'm going to go back to that utility. I'm going to go right there. I'm going to go to presets. And now I'm going to go to gates. Now this one is going to make the notes shorter. And I said they are very short. But you just can go all the way wide. By default it's 50%. But if you go all the way to 100 or 98 in this case, the notes are super wide. This of course depends on what you want to do. But here's the place where you can change it. And remember, we are on utility preset, so this, works on a utility on a preset type of thing. Is a preset type of option. So I'm going to go to a default patch. I'm going to enable the ARP, and I'm going to use the up mode, that one. So when you talk about this one, it's a pretty simple thing that you get on pretty much all the arpeggiators, and this is going to go up in octaves. So if I'm using an up, it means that if I play a key, you're going to be playing the same key. I'm going to go slower. Oh, sorry about that. I'm going to go slower. And if I play something like that, we are playing this ARP on this octave. Now this one, as soon as we go to 2, is going to play the same thing I'm doing right here on this octave and the next one. It's just repeating the same thing on the next octave. What if I go to the 3rd? So we are now repeating the same thing on 3 different octaves. And 4 is going to do the same, but on 4 different octaves. Again, this is just a pretty simple thing that you get on a lot of synthesizers. Now, if I go to pattern, it's going to be really cool because it's going to go up and down on the octaves. Right, so another cool feature, and I'm going to keep this sequence, why not? I'm going to be holding it, and I'm going to be playing it. I'm going to be playing something like that. Maybe I'm gonna go to 1. Just gonna be a little bit easier to understand here. So we are doing this sequence, right? So if I play a new key, it's just gonna ruin the sequence. And what I want to do, I want to transpose it to whatever I'm playing. So I'm gonna do this. And I want to play a different key, but I want to transpose it. You can't do this if you hold Shift. By holding Shift, you can just transpose your sequence to that, or maybe here, or maybe here, or here, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, maybe if I do something that it's just not random, maybe up is going to be a little bit easier to hear. Let me just go here, here, and here. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to release it. I'm going to go to Shift, and I want to transpose it. And now we can easily hear that we are transposing the sequence on, with each semitone. Right, pretty simple. Now, if you're not holding Shift, you're just ruining the sequence. So I'm going to go back to a default patch, and we need to talk about the spice and the dice. These are very simple to understand. Now, right here we have this option, this button. This is the bend. It's just a bend wheel. So if you start from the, right from the middle, you can go up or you can go down. Pretty simple to understand. And I'm just telling you this right now because this control will rule the spice and the dice. So I'm going to enable the ARP right now, and I'm going to be doing something, right? It doesn't matter. I'm going to go a little bit down in volume. And if I hold it, I'm just going to, hold it. So we have that. So what the spice is going to do, I'm going to go a little bit down in volume. The spice, what it will do, it will introduce variations of the gate, trigger, and pitch. It's just that. It's just going to introduce variations. Now, as soon as you enable this or you touch it, who's going to be controlling this value is going to be this. So if you go all the way up, you can easily hear that we're starting to get variations. Right? And if you go all the way up, it's just going to go more aggressively, right? That's what it does. And if I go up, we are keeping that. I go up, you get a lot of changes. So with this, it means that maybe you have a sequence, something that you're going to be creating right there. You're going to be holding it. Maybe going right there. And if I go up, it's just going to introduce variations. That's why you get the spice. Just to get a little bit more random or something a little bit different. Now, notice that the sequence is very predictable because the spice is, in this case, a little bit more predictable. If I go down and I go back up, we get pretty much the same thing, right? Right, so I'm gonna go to an init patch. I'm gonna do an ARP, and I'm just gonna hold, and I'm gonna do an up. And as now we know how this works. We're just doing an ARP, right? I'm gonna release it, so we keep it. Now I'm gonna use the dice without going to the spice first. Now this one will listen to the touch script, and we need to press and hold the touch script. And as soon as I keep going up, we get randomization. That's what the dice is gonna do. That's why it's a dice. Now the thing is that this is listening to whatever I'm sliding right here. As soon as I release it, it will just go back, or it will just keep there. Now, you need to remember that the dice works and randomizes the spice as well. So if I go to spice, we have a value right there. So in this case, if we don't want the spice, we just remove it and we go back to the same thing. So the dice will also dice the spice. So we need to make sure of that. Sometimes it's just not going to use it, but sometimes it will. In this case, notice it's just not using it. I'm going to go up, all the way down, and I'm going to release it. And I'm going to keep it right there. And we get randomization. So, if you think about this, the dice and the spice, they kind of work together. These are just a different way of introducing a little bit of something else, maybe something a little bit of magic, or maybe something a little bit more, a little bit different to whatever it is that you're doing on your ARP or your sequence. But always remember that you can go back and decide how much you want to do and just disable whatever is doing right there. And you always go back to your default sequence or ARP. It's not something that you modify it, you do it, and then it's just going to stay like that forever. Right, so let's talk about the sequencer. I'm going to always start from a default patch. How to enable it? Well, you need to go to Shift, and instead of enabling the ARP, it's going to enable the sequence, and you will know that you're in sequence mode because it's going to be blue. Now, since this is a sequence, you can go first to the utility, and right there on preset, if you go down, you can decide the length of the sequence. You can go right there, and you can decide by default is 16, but you maybe want to make it 8, and you can go all the way to 4. In this case, for now, I'm just going to keep it 8, and I'm going to enable this, and I'm going to go out. So right here at the bottom are the controls for the sequence and are a little bit different from the ARP that we get right here. Notice that the secondary functions are going to be, instead of a pattern, is going to be a play. So this is the play of the sequence. Now this one, the random, it's not random anymore. It's going to be rec. And now we have an A and a B, so we can have two sequences. And, two sequences, different sequences. I'm going to be talking about this in a minute. So you have an A and the B, and the other one is going to be a tie or a rest. Now, to create a sequence, you have mainly two ways of doing this. You can record in step mode, or you can do it in live mode. So first I'm going to do it on step mode because it's a little bit easier to understand. And then once we understand all the functions and how everything works, we can talk about how to do it live. It's going to be a piece of cake. Now, first of all, when the sequencer is on, you need to record some notes. Remember, we are doing a length of 8. So to record something, instead of doing it on play, we are just going to do it while the sequence is stopped. So I'm going to be enabling this, and it's going to say right there, it's going to give you an information of what you're doing. You're standing on step number 1. So it's awaiting for you to punch in some notes. So as soon as you start playing notes, since it can do 8 and it knows, that we can do 8, it's gonna, advance and give you right there an information of where you're standing on the step. Right now we are in step 1. I'm gonna be doing some ARP. That's gonna be 1. It's gonna stand you on step number 2. Step number 2. Then I'm gonna be going to this one. And as soon as we play this, it's gonna give you an information where you are. And if you play and hold, it also gives you an information of which key you're pressing. I'm going to be doing something randomly there, and the sequence is complete. So once you record all your notes, you do just play, and it's going to just, play your sequence. I guess I missed one. Right, so that's it. So you record and you punch in the notes. Pretty simple to understand. What if you don't like this sequence, right? Maybe if you hate it and you want to go back. So what you can do, since we are standing on the A, and this is something very important, we are creating a sequence on the A. We can do it on the B as well. But for now, we're going to work with the A. So if you want to erase whatever is that you did, you need to press and hold both at the same time, and then it's going to say sequence A erased. And if I play back, we have nothing. So I'm going to be going to rec again, and we start from a clean sequence. Remember, this is Paraphonic, and we can play 4 keys at the same time, so we can just store a chord. Now, how this works is that when you record a chord, it will just remember that chord because you can play 4 at the same time, and it will assign the maybe 3 or 4 keys to a single step. So you can do that. But there's a tiny trick. So for now, I'm just going to be, recording something. I'm going to do 1 key. I'm going to do a chord. Maybe I kind of missed it right there. I'm just in a funny position. So I'm going to be recording a chord just like that. Now you can go to another key. And remember, you can press and hold and it will just, stack them. So let's do an F. And if we do something like that and we release, it's going to store the chord. I'm going to do another chord. I'm going to release it and then do, something else to finish the sequence. Right. So if I play it back, we get the sequence, but there are no chords. Now remember, we are not in Paraphonic, so this has no idea how to play, a chord. There's several keys at the same time. It has no idea. But it is stored in memory. Now the thing is that since Paraphonic it's off, you need to turn it on. And that way you're going to be listening to your chords. But if you go back to Paraphonic off, you don't get it. So with Paraphonic off, what is going on when you record a chord, it is recognizing the note of the chord. Which one? The lowest one. This is how it works by default. If you go to Paraphonic, you're going to get your chords. But on Paraphonic off, it's just going to be picking the lower note of the chord. Right. Right, so you have an A and a B. So you can record the sequence on the A, or either, you can record a completely different sequence on the B. Now, you do have some rules, some things that you cannot do. You cannot play the A and the B simultaneously, at the same time. You just cannot. What you can do is just alternate between the A or play the B. And another thing is that if you decided how long your sequence is going to be, it's going to be the same for both. So if you're doing a step sequence length of 8 steps, A is going to be 8 and B is going to be 8. You cannot do 8 and 64, for example. So this works the same way. Right now on the A we have a sequence. What if I wanted to record a sequence on the B? Well, I'm going to be pressing the B. So now we are standing on the sequence B. And if I play it, we have nothing. So it works the same way. We're just going to be recording something, whatever, it doesn't matter. And if I play it back, we get it. And we can switch between the A and we can switch between the B. Pretty simple. Now remember, if you want to delete whatever you did, you just hold and then you do B or you do A. But what if you want to delete the A and the B at the same time? So what you need to do to delete it, you need to go to Shift and you need to, tap on the A and tap on the B, and it's going to delete everything for the A and it's going to delete everything for the B. Right? So hold and hold the Shift and then the A or the B, and it's going to delete everything. Now, how this works is just, it's not really deleting anything. It's just a little bit weird. So let's just assume that you have a sequence on the A and a sequence on the B. And then you go and you save your preset. So whatever sequence you stored on the A and B is going to be stored within the preset. So if you go Shift and you hold or long press the A or the B, it's not really erasing, it's going back to the previous state. Now, since now we are using a default patch, right? We are not saving, we don't have sequence data on an initial patch. I'm going to go back to maybe a different patch. We don't have a sequence. If I go to sequence and maybe not that, I go to sequence and I play, we have nothing. So the Shift and holding the A or the B goes back to whatever you had on memory on the sequence, on the preset, right? It's not really deleting. So if you have already a preset where you did something with your sequence and you don't like it, you don't like what you did after you saved the preset, you can always roll back to whatever information you had on the sequence when you stored the preset. Now, let me just go back to record, and I'm going to be recording a sequence. It doesn't matter which sequence. I believe it's going to be 16 steps. There we go. We have a sequence on the A, and it's going to sound something like that, right? So to copy paste, what you will need to do, since you're already standing on the A, I'm going to be pressing this one, and while I'm holding this one, I'm going to be pressing this, and it's going to just blink, and on the LED, it's going to say, dude, you just copy the A to the B, and if I go to the B and play it back, we have the same sequence. So we can do the same thing, back and forth. You go right there and tap the A, so now the B is going to be copied to the A. All right, so I'm going to start over. I'm going to go to a default patch and enable the sequence, and I'm going to be recording something new. The play is off. I'm going to enable record, and I'm just going to do something like that, something simple. Maybe something like that until we get the 16. And if I play it, we are going to be getting it. When you record a sequence and you're, of course, standing on that sequence, when play is off, whatever key you play is going to kick start that sequence. And if I release the key, it's going to stop playing it. Another thing that is going on is that it's transposing whatever sequence to whatever key you're playing. And for this to work, remember the play needs to be off. And it's because if we have play enabled, it's going to do something else. I'm going to tell you in a minute. If I go right there and I do play, what is going to happen if I play a new key? It happens that. That is what is going on. So now the main difference, it's paraphonic on and paraphonic off. Right now, every time that we listen to a sequence, step is going to be playing one single key. So it makes sense that if you play a new key, it's going to stop whatever it is that you're doing and play whatever it is that you're playing. Now, if paraphonic is on and play is on, we'll listen, to the sequence. But now, since we have one single voice or one single oscillator on one of the steps, we can we can play at the top of the sequence. And it will not, restart, and it will not transpose whatever sequence you have going on. You just can play at the top. Now, what happens if you do want to transpose? Because now, since the play is on, we cannot do it. Well, yes, you can. You need to go to Shift, hold it, and this will transpose the sequence, so you can play at the top later. So let me go all the way off, and I'm gonna release it, and now we get it. Right? So that's the main difference when play is on and off, and when Paraphonic it's on and it's off. Right, so right here at the bottom, you have the rest and you have the tie. And for now, I'm just going to go back to a default patch. So we're going to start over creating a new sequence. Remember that you can go to utility, then presets, and you can change the amount of steps that you're going to be using. So sequence length, and I'm going to go to 8. So we have something, a little bit easier. So what we want to do, we want to punch in notes, but we want to add rests and we want to add ties. So we need to enable record. So now it's listening for us to punch in some notes. So when we add a note, let's do this one so you can see it. That is going to be the first note. Right? So maybe the second note, we are standing on step number 2, we wanted to make it a rest. So the only thing you need to do is you need to touch that one, and it's going to jump to the step number 3. So the step number 2, now it's going to be a rest. I'm going to be doing this one. The next one is going to be a rest. And I'm going to be doing 2 rests, and then record 7 and record 8. And if we play it back, we get the rests. Cool, right? Okay, so let me stop. And I'm going to go and stand on the B because we have nothing on the B. So, okay, so the other thing we can do is we can tie notes. Now, what it will do, it will tie the note and make it longer. So if we play one single key or we enter one single note, that note, instead of lasting one single step, is going to last more steps because we are doing a tie. So let's just do it. I'm going to be doing this one. This one is going to be the first. I'm going to be pressing this one, and I'm going to hold it. Now, since we are holding this key, when I do this, it's going to be a tie. Now, of course, we need to be recording, so for that, now is there step number 1. I'm going to play it, hold it, and while we are holding, this is going to be a tie. Now, this is jumping to the step number 3. As soon as I release it, it's going to jump to the step number 4. So step number 2 and number 3 are the same note. Now, if I do this, I'm going to release it. I'm going to go to here, and this one is going to be that. And as soon as I release it, it's going to be 5 and 6. And if I play a 7 and an 8, we're going to be able to listen to difference. So if I play it, maybe I'm going to go down on the rate because it's maybe too fast. Now, notice that we have 2 notes that are longer. So if we want to make it obvious, a little more obvious, I'm going to be going right there. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing this. And I'm going to be doing 1, 2, 3, 4. And then just complete the sequence. And if I play it, this note, it's super long. Right? So that's going to be the rest and the tie. Right, so I'm going to delete both sequences, and I'm going to go back to the A. Now, remember, you can do chords, and you can, do the same thing at the rests, or you can tie chords. So if I go to Paraphonic and go to Rec, I'm going to be holding a chord, and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. We are standing on step number 5. I'm going to release it, and now we are in step number 6. Right? So if I just complete the sequence, I'm going to be playing. It's a very long chord, and then just, single note. Right, so I'm going to go back to the sequence number A, erase it, and we need to talk about editing. So when you enter some notes or you create a sequence, you can edit some notes. So, let's first record something because now this one is, has nothing. So I'm going to be doing something like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. If I play it back, this is how it sounds, right? Pretty simple. Now, what I want to do, I want to go through the whole sequence and maybe edit some notes, maybe adding some rests or adding some ties. Yeah, we want to edit this. So when we are stopped, we are not playing, but the record is on, you're going to see this screen. So it's going to say step number 1, and then you have 8, and it will stand you on the step number 1. So it's going to tell you which note you have right there. So now this button, what it's going to do, instead of changing the rate, since you're stopped not playing and your record on, is going to scrub through the different notes. And right now we always hear the same note because we just recorded the C2. But you can just move, through the different steps just to see what you get, what you have. And when you're standing on a step, if you want to change it, whatever new key you press right here, you're going to be overriding the previous note and just adding some new notes. So in this case, I'm just going to press this one and it's going to change it. And if I go back, we can see that we have a different note. On this one, we have a C2. I'm going to be going to step number 4 and maybe do this one. It's going to replace it. And maybe I'm going to go to the number 6, whatever. And I'm going to be adding just like that, a rest. And going to go to this one, we have nothing. And on this one, we have set that. On the 8, let's do a different note. And we have that. So now if I play it, we are able to, of course, just edit whatever sequence we had available right there. And remember, you can do chords if you wish. And that chord is going to replace that step. And for this one, you need to be on Paraphonic if you want to, to make it happen. Right. But yeah, that's what it does. Now, remember that when you enter new notes, it will replace whatever you had from before. There's no way to add notes, as far as I know. Let's say that right here, let me go to record. Let's say on this one, we have one single note. And maybe I want to play another one and stack it. Now, you cannot stack notes. On some other sequences, you can do it. But on this one, you cannot do it. Now, one more cool thing, when rec is on, we are standing on the edit mode, let's say, and what you can do, you can go to hold shift, and when you move the rate, I'm going to hold shift, and I move the rate, what is going to happen is that, notice that it's changing the amount of steps that we are, we are using. So instead of having 8 steps, I can go all the way up to 16, or maybe even make it shorter. Now I'm going to make it a 4-step long sequence. If I play it, we just get 4 steps. So is that just an easier way of, doing this? Made a mistake. You need to be on stop and then rec, and then just, go and do this. But this is a lot easier than going to maybe out of this, going back to utility preset and setting the rate from the sequence length from here. It's a little bit easier, right? Right, so I'm going to go back to an initial patch. How can we live record? It's pretty simple, and everything we did would still apply. Now, this is still the best way to create a sequence, or maybe what you have in mind and not something live, is going to be on sequence record and not live record. So we need to go right here. Sequencer is on. I'm going to be doing rec, and I'm going to do play. Notice that the rec is just blinking. So now I'm going to be doing this. And it's just going to do it. And now I can, play at the top, and whatever we do at the top, it's just going to replace whatever we have in the sequence. Remember how this works. So if I do, I can go to Paraphonic, and we get something else. Oh, there you go. You're just, doing live record. There we go. So it's that simple. Now, if you go back to play, you can still, you can play at the top if you're in Paraphonic. If I go right there, you get only 1. Remember, you can do that. Or if you do shift, you can transpose. So everything we've learned so far, it still applies. You can go and edit your sequence, by scrubbing the different steps. Okay, so let's talk about motion sequence. Now, Arturia calls this modulation tracks. Nowadays, we all know it as motion sequence, and you have it right here. So this is the secondary function of this button. On the ARP is going to be the octaves, but on sequence is going to be the modulation tracks. So what it does behind the scenes is when we record a sequence, behind the scenes we can enable the record, and we can record maybe some motion, something like that, and that motion is going to be recorded within the sequence. So let's go back to a default patch. Let's try to record something easy. So I'm going to be going to shift. I'm going to enable the sequence, and I'm going to be recording some notes. It doesn't matter which one, maybe some notes. it doesn't matter. I believe we have 16, so we're gonna need to, complete the whole sequence. And if I play it back, we have it. Cool. So we can do this live or step by step. I'm gonna show you live because it's just pretty easy to understand. I'm gonna be playing it, and I'm gonna be hitting the record. And it says real-time recording. We already know this. Now I'm gonna be moving the filter. This is the first param we can modulate or record. And I'm gonna do it. And now I'm gonna release it. Now notice, I'm not touching anything, and it's modulating this behind the scenes. So it remembers what I did with this. This is the motion sequence. Now, this modulation is gonna live right here. So we have up to 4 different modulation sequence. The first one now is being occupied by the cutoff that I just did. But if I go to record and start moving the resonance, now this resonance is going to be standing on the number 2. And so on and so on and so on. I'm going to go back to record and I can just modify the timbre. Just something like that. And the timbre, will be recorded and modulated. And that's going to be the number 3. We can even do the type. Maybe I can go right there, change it to some other type, and then go back. Right? So pretty cool and, very useful. So now we have 4 modulation tracks on, and you can do up to 4. If you try to do another one, it's going to tell you, dude, you're full. You're not going to be able to do it. So maybe we want to delete, maybe a modulation track or do something. We want to do some editing. And yes, you can. So first, it's going to be deleting a motion sequence. So when you go right there and you tap, you're going to be going through the different modulation tracks. And right there, it's going to just tell you what you have. On that one, you're doing the param 2 of the VCO. On that one, it's blinking and it's the type. The first one is going to be the cutoff. The next one is going to be the resonance, and so on and so on. So just by tapping, you just go through the different motion sequences. Now, how can you do to delete them? How can you do that? So I'm going to go to the number 4, and I know I'm standing right there. So when you click and it's blinking, it's because you're there. So if you want to delete that one, you just press and hold, and it's just going to do something. As soon as you release it, nothing's going to happen. But if you press and hold, it's going to go down, it's going to show you that, and then you do hold. And when you do hold, it's going to blink, and it's going to delete it. Let's do it again. I'm going to go right there. I'm going to press and hold, and I'm going to do hold, and it's just going to delete it. Right, so I'm going to go to a new patch and start over again. I'm going to record a new sequence. I'm going to go like that, and I'm going to do something like that, something very simple. Okay, so if I play it, we get it, right? We get it. And I'm going to go down in the, on the BPM, so we can do something, we can really hear the changes. And I'm gonna maybe change the envelope just a little bit, so we have something like that. Right. Okay, so the idea right now is that if we record a motion sequence, we can edit it, but maybe we can, record the motion step by step. And yes, we can. So I'm gonna be going to rec on. We always need to be on rec on, and this works on editing mode. So we need to go to edit mode. So when we go to rec, right there, it's gonna stand you on whatever it is that you're doing. And remember, this one is gonna scrub through the different steps. When you're going through different steps, since record it's on, you can record sequence. Maybe move this, and it's gonna just let you hear what you're doing, maybe. And notice that the light on the number 1 is just blinking. So we are just recording the first one. So maybe this one is gonna be like this, and there we go. So I'm gonna go to step number 2, and step number 2 is gonna be all the way down. Step number 3 is gonna be all the way up, and you can record the sequence this way instead of doing it live. And just you have a lot more control at the end of the day just by doing this. And I'm just going randomly. We have 16 steps, which is a lot, maybe. I'm gonna go right there. Just, provide different values for this, and so on, and so on, and so on. And I'm going somewhere because I want to show you something right now. So that's the last one, and there we go. We are back to the first. And if I play it, we get it. Right? Pretty easy to understand. Now the thing is that right now, the changes, the modulation from one step to the next one, it's going to be this cutoff going all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, all the way up. It's pretty aggressive. So we have no way of smoothing. It's pretty harsh, but we do. Now, if I go to utility, within the preset option, I'm going to go to preset and you scroll all the way down, you are going to have some options like sequence 1 smooth, sequence 2 smooth, and then 4 and 3 and 4. So this is talking about the motion sequence or the modulation tracks. So if I go to the number 1 and enter to the sequence 1 smooth, it's going to tell you that it's off. So the transition of the modulation of the mod track is pretty harsh. So if I enable now the transition or the movement of the cutoff between step and the one step and the next one, it's going to be a little bit more smoother. And if we can play it, and we can easily hear that this is just trying to smooth all the different values. Now if I turn it off, it's going to be pretty harsh and smooth and harsh. So you can smooth this one, but if you wanted to, maybe you can go to the sequence number 2, don't do a smooth if you do a different value, and do it on the third, and so on and so on and so on. So you have a little bit more control on this one. Right, so I'm gonna go back right here. I'm gonna delete the motion sequence, and we have nothing. If I play it, we have pretty much nothing. We have nothing, just the key that the sequence that we recorded a second ago. All right. So can you modulate matrix values? Yes, you can. So I'm maybe gonna select the LFO and the pitch because it's something that we can really hear. And I'm gonna be enabling this value. I'm gonna be doing record, and I'm gonna be just doing some playing. And we are on real-time recording. I'm gonna be modulating this up and down. Right? So you can modulate this, and of course you can do it on a step-by-step basis, just like we did with the cutoff. So think about all the possibilities that, all the different sounds that you can create with the mod, the modulation tracks, the sequence, this very simple envelope, but then you have the cycling envelope, and then you have like 16 types of different oscillators that can create different sounds. This is a very small synth, very lightweight, very light, but the possibilities with of cheap synthesizer, which is cheap for most countries, is just amazing. Yeah, you can do a lot of things. Okay, so I'm gonna go to a new default patch. Right, so we get nothing. Now we do have a Unison mode. It's a little bit weird to get it to work, but once you get it to work, it's just, it's pretty obvious. But at first, it's just a little bit weird. So we have 4 different oscillators, right? And when we go to Paraphonic, we know that we can play different keys and we get the 4 different voices, simulated voices. But what we can do, we can stack the 4 voices on a single key and we can do unison, right? We can go to unison mode. Now remember, when you're working on unison mode, all the 4 voices are going to be stacked on top of each other. And we can detune them a little bit just to get that cool unison sound. Now, getting there is just a little bit weird. Now we need to stand on Paraphonic mode on, right? We need to be on. And I'm going to be playing a key. I'm going to do hold first. I'm going to play, this one. Right. And I'm doing this because you will need to have 3 different hands just to do this. So with Paraphonic on, I'm playing a key. So we need to go to shift and we need to hold the Paraphonic at the same time. So when we hold it, and let me just show you right there. Notice that the Paraphonic is blinking. I made a mistake, it went off. But let me just do it again. I'm gonna go to Paraphonic, I'm gonna play the key, I'm gonna do it again, and it's gonna show you unison spread. So right here, you can just shift the spreads, just a little bit weird, right? So now, maybe I'm gonna release it, I'm gonna play again, and we get that unison spread. Now remember, you cannot play chords because now the 4 voices are being stacked on top of each other. Now if you want to do it again, I'm going to go right there and you can adjust the unison spread, but it's just a little bit funny to get there. I'm going to go right there, make sure that the Paraphonic, notice it's blinking. This means that the unison mode is on. And now we get unison. Now, sometimes doing this to adjust the unison sucks a little bit. So what you can do, you can go right there to utility, you can go to preset, and if you go down, you will find a unison spread, which is the same thing that we were getting right there. So right here, you can just fine tune the unison. You can go all the way down, so we are not spreading the voices. And you just can fine tune your unison the way you like to. And if you want to get out of this, just Paraphonic off, Paraphonic on, and you're back to normal. So another thing that you get is going to be the chord mode. Now, this one is just as funny as getting to work as getting the unison mode to work. Now, Paraphonic mode needs to be on, and you need to press and hold it. Now, once you do that, it's going to start blinking, and I'm going to show you. Let me just press it, and I'm pressing and holding, right? So now notice that it's blinking. Maybe on the camera it's not so obvious, but it's blinking. Now I'm going to do a chord. Right? So as soon as you do a chord, it's going to remember that chord. Right? So I'm going to release the Paraphonic, and now I'm going to release the keys. So now this one is still blinking, right? Maybe you cannot see it. It's maybe if I do something like that. There you go. It's a little bit clear, right? So it's going to start blinking, but very slowly, not so fast like we get it with the unison mode. Now this means that it's going to remember the chord that we did, and when we play a key, it's going to do that chord but transpose it. And just like that, you're using a chord mode. Right? It's the same chord we recorded, but transposing it now. So that's the chord mode. So if you want to get out, go out of the Paraphonic and go back in. And when the light is steady, it means that you're on normal mode back again. All right, so let's discuss the last thing we can talk about on this tiny little guide, which is maybe not so tiny, because this thing can do a lot of things. So you do get a scale mode. How the scale is going to work is that when you set the scale, the keys will only respond to that scale. It's a little bit funny, so let me just explain you first. We need to go to utility right there, and let me just first start doing the default patch. I'm going to go to utility. Now when you go there, and you can go to preset, and when you go to preset, it's going to say scale, right? So then you have another thing, it's going to be the root note. We're going to talk about this in a minute. So when you go to scale, you have different scales you can choose from. For now, global is just, the keyboard that you have, chromatic. So as you go off, move it, it's going to say off, but then it's going to say major, then it's going to say minor, and so on, and different, it's going to give you different scales. Pretty easy. For now, I'm just going to go to minor, right? I'm going to extend the minor. So as soon as you go there and you get it, now the keyboard is going to respond to that scale. Now, I'm going to go right there. We have a C. If I play this one, we have a D. So in this one, we should be getting a C sharp or, a D flat. So if I play it, we don't, right? This one is the C, and this one sounds the same. So in scale mode, what it does, if whatever note that you're playing doesn't belong to whatever scale you selected, it's not going to play it. It's going to play whatever note it's closer that belongs to that scale. Since C is closer to this one will not be C sharp or, D flat. It's going to be C. So in this case, if you're really working with a scale, very specific scale, it's going to let you, try to avoid hitting keys that don't belong to that scale. That's why it's useful, and I'm showing you this. Now the thing is that when you do this, everything is just fine-tuned to be on a C note. That's your root note, a C. But you do have a way to select a different root. So I'm going to go to utility, just like we did before, and within the preset, you have the scale that we already did, but then you have the root note. So by default, it's going to be a C note. So right here, you can select your root note, and whatever scale that you're selecting is going to respond to whatever root note you select right here. Okay, so we are done in this one. Remember, I've recorded a different video, a different guide talking about all the different oscillators. You get the link right there at the top of the cards, or you get the link on the description. So if you like this guide and you find it useful, remember to like and subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee just to say thanks, you can go to the links in the description. You have links for PayPal, you have Google Thanks, and you have Patreon. Maybe you can be a 1-month patron. All right, so see you on the next one.